Hello and welcome to my third track guide for F-Zero 99. Today we'll be taking a look at Sand Ocean. Sand Ocean is definitely where the game starts to get harder, especially in the Nightly Grand Prix, where your Sand Ocean performance can often make or break your overall placing. As always, this guide is meant for newer players or players looking to increase their skill level. There may be things I go over in this guide that you already know, in which case that is awesome to hear and I hope I can teach you something new. And before I get started, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I am very appreciative of all the support you guys give me, and it heavily encourages me to keep making videos. We're also getting pretty close to 1,000 subscribers, and I would love to make that push before the end of the year. Without further ado, let's get started. The first big thing about Sand Ocean is the fact that there are two different pathways to reach the starting line, unlike Mute City 1 and Big Blue. While one starting path is similar to the previous two courses, there's a new one with two different routes to take depending on where you start. You don't want to mess up the start because that's going to put you right at the bottom of the pack to start the race immediately. I would recommend staying on the path closest to you, so if you start diagonally across from one of the other ones, to keep going straight until you can make a turn, or even still keep going straight to reach the starting line. As long as you generally don't run into any of the rough patches on the sides of the track, you usually get into a, I want to say, top 50 position to start the first lap, which is pretty decent. Sand Ocean is a long course, relatively speaking. It's the first one where your driving ability starts to really matter in a race. The better you're able to drive, and the better you're able to take lines, the better you will do on this course, a lot more than Mute City or Big Blue. All the turns on Sand Ocean can easily be conquered with blast turning regardless of the vehicle. If you don't know what blast turning is, it is a specific technique for F-Zero and F-Zero 99 which involves hammering the accelerator when taking turns. I went much more in depth about it in a previous guide on my channel, and I strongly recommend watching that if you haven't. The first turn right after the pit area is pretty easy. If you are boosting or plan to boost right after the turn, I would recommend not accelerating, as in cutting the accelerator off, and drifting through the turn, and then boosting after you finish. If you are not boosting or don't plan to boost after that turn ends, simply blast turn your way through it. The second turn, the first hairpin, is a lot trickier and could be considered the hardest turn on the course. There are two ways I like to take this hairpin, depending on my position in the pack and if there are other drivers, AI or human, around me. The first one is taking a wide line where I go out, and then on the turn I start blast turning inwards to take the turn as sharply as I can even though I'm going wide. The reason I go wide is mainly to avoid hitting other players and to conserve some energy. Usually after this type of turn, I immediately boost as well. The second way to take the turn is a lot harder to do but can get you better results. You hug the inside of the hairpin, and then once you start to turn, you cut off the accelerator and try to glide your way through the barrier to take the turn very sharply. You might even need to brake in order to hit the barrier. You will turn very sharply, but you will almost always have to boost immediately after to maintain your position or cut a few spots ahead depending on where you end up. The third area to keep aware of is a series of turns that involves a sweeping turn into a wider hairpin, into a kind of chicane, into a corner turn. Generally, to take these turns well, you want to follow the line of the barriers. Starting with the sweep, hug the right barrier, either through blast turning or drifting, and follow that line. Once you reach the hairpin, hug the left side of the hairpin. Try to ride that left wall until you get past the chicane, in which on the corner turn, you cut back to the right side again. Generally, after that corner turn, I like to boost as well. Speaking of boosting, there are a lot of places on the track for Sand Ocean where a boost can be a great option. I have already mentioned the two most important locations, the first being after the first hairpin, and then the second being right after the last corner turn. I always recommend boosting there to keep or overtake your current position. The other locations are the first turn on the course. You could either boost into or right out of the turn itself. The straightway surrounded by the rough after the first hairpin but before the second sweep turn, and the straightway before the lap line or the straightway on the pit area itself. Keep in mind during an actual race that there's going to be the other human players and the AI snail drivers as well, so it may be difficult to take these lines perfectly, but at least try to follow the general concept and you should be good. In terms of pack play, I'd employ the same general strategy as Big Blue. You definitely want to get a top spot or at least high in the pack early and try to maintain that with superior driving. If you do end up falling behind, spark bagging could be a good idea, but generally the Skyway isn't as effective in pulling out a surprise win as much as it is on Big Blue. Though, the Skyway of course is still very useful on this course, as it is with all the other ones as well. There are two areas on the track that I like to use the Skyway. One grants you a pretty nice extension, while the other one gives you a lot of protection in terms of your energy. The first one, marked with a red star on the map, is generally activated after the first turn, though depending on your position, if you're low enough, you can activate it as soon as after the first pit area and still get an extension. Activating it here will carry you through the first hairpin on the Skyway, but it won't drop you off after, because you are only dropped off on straightaways. If you are able to get to the end of your Skyway boost while going through the hairpin, you will go through the sweeping churn and be dropped off much later on the straightaway surrounded by the dirt and rough patches. The second one, marked with an orange star, is around the beginning of the series of tight turns. The reason I activate it there, even though you don't really get a large extension off of the corner turn, is because usually that part of the track is always congested with a ton of human players and a lot of AI snails. And this might be anecdotal, but I feel like I encounter a lot more exploding snails there than anywhere else on the course. So being able to activate the Skyway there and be able to cruise through it stress-free is very, very nice. Now, if you're in the GP mode, this is the track where I would recommend you start being very aggressive in trying to place high. With Mute City 1 in Grand Prix, you can realistically place low, but stack KOs to still make it an effective race so that you can get more energy later on. In Big Blue, it can be easy to stack KOs, but also easy to start placing high. Much easier than Mute City 1 at least. With Sand Ocean, this is where you should start leaning into trying as hard as you can to place higher than lower. Because even if you do get some KOs and stuff like that, it won't be as effective as it would be on the first two tracks. So definitely aim to at least place first or top 10 in the Grand Prix mode to improve your standings later on. Or alternatively, if you're running out of energy, definitely aim to just try and place more than anything else. Sand Ocean is the Night League track where luck plays the smallest factor. Getting a good position start before the first lap, as well as really good driving and knowing where to boost, and using the Skyway for defensive purposes or for getting extensions can be the difference between placing very high and very low. Generally, try to be out in the front and try to drive way better than your opponents to cut ahead. If you end up falling behind, don't feel bad about spark bagging, but definitely try to get back to the front as fast as you can rather than hanging back for sparks and Skyways. Thanks for watching this guide. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Thank you again. I'll see you next time.